welcome to this edition of Grace in High Heels. I am at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention here in the beautiful Opryland Hotel in Nashville, Tennessee. And I'm having so much fun meeting such amazing people here, including our beautiful guest today. Shanti Feldhahn received her graduate degree from Harvard and has worked on Wall Street and on Capitol Hill. She's a best-selling author whose books have sold 2 million copies in 22 languages, including For Women Only and The Male Factor, The Written Rules, Misperceptions, and Secret Beliefs of Men in the Workplace. Her work has been covered by leading media, including the New York Times, NBC Today, and she is here with us today on Grace in High Heels. Well, Shanti Feldhahn, thank you so much for stopping by today. We are just honored to have you here on Grace in High Heels. And I have to tell you, I have told you earlier, but I want to share it with the audience. The first time I ever met you, we have met before, you were speaking at my church, and I had just gotten married, and out comes this wonderful woman, this Wonder Woman, who is going to talk about marriage. And I had just gotten married 2 weeks before that, and the man who married me was standing on the stage with you, introducing this woman who has all these answers for marriage. And I thought, yes. And then you started talking about all this power we have as women, and I'll never forget my husband leaning over to me in the pew, and he said, "She has all the answers. You need to go buy that book." So we rushed out to the table, and I picked up a copy of the book, and it was For Women Only.
The book about men, about understanding men.
Understanding men, and it was, from then on, it was like our coffee table book, because David would reach out and pick it up and say, you might want to study up. So Shanti, you have been a figure in our home for quite the time. So
that kind of cracks me up, but okay.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm still working at it every day, but I'm thrilled to have you here to give me a refresher course today.
Well, I'm still working at it too. I was telling you that sometimes some of my friends will come up to me and go, honey, there's this book you need to read.
So that's always comforting as an author, isn't it? Yeah, right. I'm glad I let y'all know that. Well, I want to get to your surprising secrets of happy marriages. You have written a new book called The Surprising Secrets of Highly Happy Marriages, and we want to talk about that book because I want to hear about that book. And the first tip you mentioned, I just want to go through a few of the tips.
Yeah,
you have such great tips, and I want to go through those specifically. The first one is little is big, and that the small everyday choices we make are really what is important. Will you talk to us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, let me give a little bit of the background too, that this isn't just my opinion. This was my latest research project. Okay. And what I was doing basically was I was trying to study the most happily married couples to figure out what they were doing differently. You know, what is it that's making them so happy that other people could replicate? And often it was the things they didn't even know that were such a big deal, and this was one of them. What I found is that the most happily married couples, there were a few things, little day-to-day things that the wives were tending to do for the husbands, and that these little day-to-day things that the husbands were tending to do for the wives, and they wasn't necessarily this big conscious effort, but they just tended to. And so these things are really important to a husband and a wife, but we don't necessarily know that they are. And so doing them on purpose suddenly changes everything. So here's an example. One of the things that the wives tended to do for the husbands was say thank you.
Oh,
a lot. Big. It is. Because here's really the deal, is that for years I have wanted to try to find out what emotionally hits a man the same way that I love you hits a woman, right? Because you know how as a woman, I love you says 10 different things to us. It's not just, I have this affection for you. It says, you're mine. And it says, I would choose you all over again. And it says all these cool things. Well, you know, when I learned and put in For Women Only that a man's greatest need is to be respected and appreciated, I learned really quickly it really doesn't work to sort of follow your husband around the house and coo, oh, honey, I respect you so much. You know,
get away from me.
After a while, my poor husband was like, time out. You know, it just doesn't have the same ring to it. And so I've been on this quest to try to find out, okay, what does have the same ring to it? What hits a man in that same way? And so that's what it is. It's thank you.
Wow.
It basically speaks to the heart of a man that wonders, am I any good at what I do? That's like the heart cry of a man. Do I measure up? Does she think that I'm any good at what I do? And so when you notice the little day-to-day things and you say, you know, thank you for mowing the lawn, even though it was so hot outside. To him, it's like she noticed what I did and said it was good. And all of that to us is like, yeah.
Right.
But for him, that's like a dozen roses. It's a big, big deal. So that's on the men's side. On the women's side, what the men tended not to know was such a big deal. The women said even these little things like, if he'll reach across and take my hand when we're walking across a parking lot, or we're sitting together at church and he reaches and puts his arm around me. You know, the women are like, oh, you know, it's just, you melt because it says, you're mine, right? And the guys are like, really? Like, they have no idea.
The guys are saying, don't touch me.
No, they're fine with it.
Yeah,
they just
they
don't
like
know
the touch.
They don't know
They
it
just
matters.
don't know what to do.
Yeah, they don't know it matters.
And see, we tend to think that men think exactly like we do, and that's why it's so important for us to know all of this. And I remember when you came to the church and you were saying all these things, I thought, well, don't they just know? And they don't know, just like we don't just
like
know.
We don't know. Exactly.
For men. I want to show the book before we go on, because if every couple could look like this couple on the front of the book, we would have it together. Look how happy they look. And so, you know, it's important that we learn these different facts, because we have to know little words, 2 words, thank you.
Thank you.
What a huge difference in saving marriages.
It really is. And this is really the beauty of this. The subtitle of the book really says it all. It's the little things that make a big difference. And that is what is so powerful about this stuff, is that as I was doing the research, I almost missed some of these things because I couldn't believe they mattered so much. I mean, they were these little actions, these little words, and instead of it needing to be, I need a PhD in psychology, you know, to have a good marriage. Right. It turns out that actually, no, you just need to know a few of these things about the process of what will make you so much happier in your relationship. And if you're not in that place right now, it's not going to take a PhD to get there.
Anybody can do it, is what you're saying,
exactly.
Shanti, just to learn those secrets.
Exactly.
Now, Shanti, you also say that we have to believe the best, but how do we do that when we're holding all these grudges, or when we're seeing things in them that are not exactly the best? How are we supposed to believe the best in them?
Well, see, here's really what I found about this piece of the research. It's almost a prerequisite to have a happy marriage is to believe the best of the other person's intentions. It's not believing that they're suddenly a perfect person, because that ain't gonna happen for any of us. I'm not perfect, I know my husband isn't. And so that's not what I mean. It's really about believing that their intentions towards you are good and they care about you. It is very easy when you are hurt, and everybody gets hurt. The happy couples get hurt, right? Right? It's very easy to think kind of, he knew how that would make me feel, and he said it anyway. And you don't realize it, but what you're thinking is, he doesn't care about me. Now, actually, that's this subtle, poisonous feeling. And what the happiest couples did that I noticed that was such a big difference is they would stop themselves and they would be like, no, yeah, ow, that hurt, but he must not have known how that would make me feel, because I know he cares about me. I know he loves me, so he must not have known how that would make me feel, or he wouldn't have said it.
So it's the intention of the heart.
It's switching from thinking this person did that on purpose and has this bad intention towards me, towards the person thinking, no, I'm going to believe the best of their intentions. Because you know what? We can all be stupid sometimes and be jerky people, and have a bad day, but it doesn't mean we don't care. Let me give you an example of what that might look like, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Because this is, I learn from examples really well. And so one of the couples I was talking to, it was a young woman, she was pregnant with their first child. And something had happened that had really hurt her feelings badly. They were had been waiting for this restaurant to open, and it was one of those you had to get on the reservations list 3 months in advance, and it was going to be their last big date night before the baby came, and and they'd been excited about it and counting down the days, and the reservation time was at 6:30, and he took a client call at 6 o'clock and missed the reservation. And she was just heartbroken. And now here's how many of us would have handled it. We would have been like, I can't believe you did that. You care about work more than me. What happened? You know. And instead, I said, how did you handle that? Because this is a very happy couple. This is one of my highly happy married couples. And she said, you know, I wanted to go that direction, but I stopped. And I thought to myself, no, he cared about this as much as I did. He's been just as excited as I was. I know he wanted to be there. And so she automatically approached it a little differently. And she said, I'm so disappointed. What happened? You know, thinking to herself, I know he cares. What on earth happened? And he said, honey, about 5:30, I overheard my boss talking about the fact that there were going to be layoffs next week. And I felt like when the client called at 6, he's listening. I couldn't tell the client, I can't talk right now because I've got to go to dinner with my wife, even though maybe the wife would have liked him to do that. But he felt like he couldn't. He said, we have a baby on the way. And so because she approached it with, let's look for a more generous explanation than he doesn't care about me, she automatically approached it in a way that allowed them to maintain the relationship rather than hammering him. And then he's feeling caught from two directions, the boss and the wife. That's an example of something that happens every day in our relationships. If we will look for the best of the other person's intentions, the beauty of it is it's not wishful thinking. The vast majority, 99 point something percent, said they care about their spouse. It's just that the unhappy couples don't believe it.
And Shanti, you said something that I know my husband brought up to me after we heard you the first time.
Yeah.
It was that hammering thing. And I know he said, well, he pointed out to me, and we don't really realize that we do it a lot of times. We don't stop and look at what the other person's experience is. We just begin to assume that they had this heart against us, when you're saying really 99% of the time, their heart is not against us. Their heart is for us. And we need to give them the opportunity to at least explain and
to show that.
Come at it with some empathy instead of saying, you messed up, what the heck?
Exactly.
And hammering became a word, and really you helped us learn that in our marriage, because he would say, you're hammering me, and I'm like, oh yes, I am hammering you, I'm sorry. And so it is very important for us to look and say, I need to make sure that I'm looking at my spouse's heart and his intentions. You also debunk a myth that I want to point out. Everybody has always said, don't go to bed angry. Shanti, you're saying maybe it's okay to sleep on it. Tell us about that.
Yes, I know. I knew you were going to bring that up, because everybody looks at that and they're like, that's one of the secrets, is to go to bed mad? What? and really, here's what happened, is that as I was talking to the happy couples and interviewing them and trying to figure out what is it that they do differently, I was really focused on what is it specifically that they're doing as opposed to what they say to do, right? Makes sense? What is it you're actually finding works? And I would ask, you know, they would say, well, one of the things is you cannot go to bed mad. That's very important. And so I would say, okay, so do you ever go to bed mad? Well, it's a really important principle. And, you know, we do this, and I'm like, no, I get it. That's not what I'm asking.
And then throw that verse about don't let the sun go down on your wrath.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I'm like, I get all that, but that's not actually what I'm asking. What I'm asking is, do you ever go to bed mad? And the answer was almost always, well, yeah, sometimes, you know. And so what I dug into with them is what I found, and what they said is that in real life, in practice, they had found that when you have two upset, emotional, tired, exhausted people who have this pressure of feeling like we have to resolve it before we go to bed, you start hurting each other's feelings, you start agreeing to things you wish you hadn't agreed to. And sometimes that pressure can lead to actually creating problems, because you end up resentful the next day or whatever. And so these couples in practice had found that sometimes the most important thing they could do to preserve their relationship is to say, look, we are upset with each other, we're not getting anywhere, we're exhausted, I can't think. Can we hold on to, just wait and deal with this in the morning? And when they dealt with it in the morning, half the time they said, they were like, what was that about?
I don't even remember,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I was just tired.
But if it was still there, they dealt with it. What we found was different on the survey is everyone else, there was a much higher degree of the next morning kind of not wanting to deal with it and just sort of ignoring it and hoping it went away. And that was the difference, is the happiest couples, they wouldn't let that happen. If it was still an issue, they dealt with it. Now, you might be wondering, a lot of, and I was wondering, as I was kind of confronting this, I'm like, but does it really matter if that's what they did, if that's not what the Bible says? You know, if it's against what the Bible says? So I took another look at that scripture in Ephesians. And it turns out that don't let the sun go down on your anger, scripture that everybody quotes, we think of that as being, quote, don't go to bed mad, even though that's not what it says, right?
That's right.
And so I looked at it, and it turns out Paul is quoting a verse from the Old Testament. He says there, basically, don't sin in your anger. In your anger, don't sin. Don't let the sun go down in your anger. He's quoting Psalm 4, which says, in your anger, don't sin. Think about it overnight and remain silent.
Wow. What a flip on that scripture.
So the common denominator biblically is this idea of don't sin in your anger, don't treat each other poorly. And, you know, if you need to work it out before bed in order to not sin in your anger, do it. But if trying is going to put so much pressure on you that you're going to end up having a bad thing come out of it, wait, think about it overnight and remain silent and deal with it in love the next day.
That's amazing. Oh, wow. What a truth she shared with us.
It takes
and
the
I know
pressure off,
a lot of
doesn't
people
it?
are at home going, whoo, glad I did it that way last night now. And I know for me, that's another one. I'll bring that up just like the slamming or when David brings that up, I'll have to bring that up. That's beautiful, Shanti. Wow. Well, I know you've done so much research, and one of the things that you talk about in the book also is that there are 5 fantastic things that we can do for him or he can do for us. So will you cover those real quick? First of all, let's start with him.
Yeah, well, one of them is the thank you. One of them is that idea of saying thank you for things, right? And we probably don't have time to get to all of them, but another one that's really kind of not big surprise is the whole idea of showing him that you desire him physically and having that sexual intimacy.
Really?
I know, shocker. I know that just shocks everybody in the room. Because those, honestly, there are some of these little signals, these little day-to-day things that you really didn't know mattered. Another one is kind of the next step in the thank you, which is not just thank you for mowing the lawn even though it was so hot outside, but man, the house looks great. Basically, great job, right? Yeah. And then the next step even in that is, you know what he did yesterday? He spent all day in the yard. You know, you're out talking to people, and you know he spent all day in the yard, and he always makes the house look good. Your husband will be like, "Oh, it's no big deal," and inside,
puffing up.
Oh my goodness! But here's what women don't get. It's not puffing up an ego. It's realizing that on the inside, he doubts himself. He doesn't know if he's doing any good for you. And so when you say that, it's not inflating his ego. It's actually bringing him up to a level where he can feel good about how he's doing for you. And so that's an example of those little things that just make a big difference day to day for men.
What a great way to look at that and see that in a different way. It's not inflating his ego, it's helping him come up to where we need to be able to communicate with him. And in the long run, as women, that's going to do us some good too, because he's going to be a better husband.
Absolutely.
Now, very quickly, I know this will make them want to go out and buy the book. What do you mention that he can do for us that will make us feel fantastic?
Yeah, okay, well, one of the things we were talking about, grab her hand when you're walking across a parking lot. Yes, men, it does matter. Putting your arm around her when you're sitting together in a public place. Another one that's actually very surprising to men is when you're in a funk, men, pull yourself out of it quickly. Don't let that black cloud hang over your head, because men think it only matters to them.
Yeah.
You know, it's a big deal to women.
That's
because we're like in this, are we okay?
And we want to fix it too.
And we want to get out of the, we want you to be out of the room. Yes. And so for men to know that when you pull yourself out of that and you kind of shake it off, that speaks love to your wife.
That's great. Well, Shanti, thank you. And I just want to say again, for everyone who is watching, go get a copy of this book. Shanti, we can get a copy of it on your website. Please tell us how to get that.
Well, the easiest way is go to surprisingsecrets.com.
Surprisingsecrets.com. You want to get this book. Highly happy marriages. We're all watching. We all want to have highly happy marriages. And even if you're like me and you were single for many, many years of your life before you got married, get the book and be ahead when you get married. married. What a great idea for anybody who's getting married to pick up a copy for them. Shanti, thank you for traveling the country, for all that you do to save marriages, to encourage marriages. You are fantastic, and most of all, thank you for doing it with such a heart of love. God bless you. Thanks for being here. David, what would you say after being married for 10 years now? We've celebrated our 10-year anniversary this year. What would you say is most important about the art of listening when it comes to just sitting down and allowing that other person to share? Why is that so important?
Because as a man, you're indicating to your wife that she matters, and that it's important that I am listening, and that I'm learning from what we've talked about to become a better husband.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's so powerful, and you're so right. And as women, I know that are watching, we do feel so loved when we feel like our husbands listen to us and really do hear what our feelings are. Another really important point that Shanti brought up in the book, David, that I want us to look at is going to bed mad. And as I said, you and I have certainly done that, not intentionally, not knowing Shanti would recommend that in the book, The Highly Happy Marriages. But in that book, as we've been talking about on today's show, she does say that sometimes it's healthy to go to bed mad. From a man's perspective, David, why would that be healthier than hashing it out when you're tired, or when it's time to go to bed, or after a long day? Why can you see that that would be important for a man?
Well, because your mind isn't fresh. Mm-hmm. You're exhausted, your mind is exhausted, your thoughts, and as you well know, I mean, we've done this before, but in the morning when we wake up, it's over. Mm-hmm. Our body and mind are refreshed. Mm-hmm. In quiet time, you think about things and you reflect upon what has been said, and then you address it with a clear mind.
Mm-hmm. Wow, what a great thing to say, too. You reminded me of something very important. In the morning time, doing your quiet time, getting up and having that time before you even connect in the morning, to ask the Lord, how do you want me to say what I need to say? If you could say one thing to husbands who are watching that would definitely improve and help them in their marriage and encourage them at the same time, what would you say to them?
Well, I think first and foremost, pay attention to your wife. Make sure she knows that you notice the little things, okay? Mm-hmm. Don't pick. It's so easy to look the other way and say, you know what, when I first got married, I'd say this and I'd say that, and I've learned, you know what, it's not worth it, the little things. And pick your battles, but pick them to where you don't have that many. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that's the important thing that we've learned. Mm-hmm. Is it really worth saying something or picking at this or just look it's in the law, it's the little things.
Yeah, it is.
It's the little things that you can ignore. Mm-hmm. Just look the other way. I don't know about a lot of women, but, you know, with you and I, we laugh about your closet. And I would early on talk about your closet, and now I don't say a word about your closet. So, you know, you have to learn what's really important in communication.
Right. And for those of you who are watching, there's a big secret about me that you didn't know. Yes, David is very immaculate about his closet. Me, I get in such a hurry. I throw things in there, and then I have one day a week that I clean everything out. And so it's not as important to me. But that is true. In the beginning, you would look in there, and it was a big deal. Right. And now you've learned to pick your battles. And I would think the same thing is true for wives. We can tend to be very nitpicky about things that really don't matter in the long run. And I always say in my conferences, It is important that we spend time showing our families that we love them, that we appreciate them. And if that one dish in the sink doesn't get done, it is not going to end the world. But if we don't let our families know that we love them, that we appreciate them, and that we value them, that is something that doesn't go unnoticed. And so while a clean house is important, and I know I keep a very clean house, I'm married to a person who wants it very clean, and that's great. But the most important thing is that our families know that we love them and that we appreciate them and that we respect our husbands, and husbands, that you love your wife. And so, David, thank you so much for joining me today. I know we could just talk so much more about this, but and maybe I'll have you back on pretty soon. We'll talk more about marriage. But just remember, if you are looking for a great book to help you, Highly Happy Marriages by Shanti Feldhahn, seen in today's interview, is available at bookstores everywhere. Be sure you pick up a copy and get help for your marriage, and just learn how to have a highly happy marriage, because that's what God intended in the art of marriage. Thanks for tuning in today.
Wow, I don't know about you, but I definitely have so much to learn about the institution of marriage. Whether you're married or hope to be married someday, be sure to pick up a copy of Shanti's book when you visit Shanti.com. Well, it's been another wonderful day here in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm so glad that you could join us for this edition of Grace in High Heels. Until next time, know you are loved and keep walking in God's grace.
You can share the message you heard today and listen to Shannon's teachings and music when you order her books, music, and teaching CDs. Visit the store at shannonperry.com and pick up a copy of her latest book, The Overlooked Generation, written especially for parents raising children in today's complicated culture. Her popular book, Grace in High Heels, is a short devotional packed with some of Shannon's funniest personal stories and real-life lessons that have brought hope and healing to women of all ages. You can worship with the songs on Shannon's latest music CD, or add to your library when you order a copy of her audio teaching CDs or the DVD of today's teaching. If your church would like to invite Shannon to speak and sing at your next event, email her at shannon@shannonperry.com. Join Shannon on Facebook and interact with her on a daily basis at facebook.com/Shannon Perry Ministries.